What would you think if I told you that the most powerful woman you'll ever meet is the one who no longer needs love? Not because she has given up on it, not because she is cold or broken or bitter, but because she has walked so deeply into the fires of longing, abandonment, fantasy, and projection, that she came out the other side purified, stripped of illusions, unbound by hunger, no longer a prisoner of the aching question, am I lovable? This is not the woman society raised. She is not soft in the way they told her to be, pliable, accommodating, endlessly available for the emotional nourishment of others. She is soft in a different way, in the way fire is soft when you don't touch it, in the way silence becomes deafening when you realize it is not empty. It is sovereign. Carl Jung would tell us that such a woman has faced her shadow, not the petty flaws or surface fears, but the raw core of her wounded feminine, the girl who begged to be chosen, who twisted herself for crumbs of affection, who tried to be lovable instead of whole. The woman who no longer needs love has met that girl. She sat with her in the dark, held her through the sobbing silence, and then she let her die, not with cruelty, but with ceremony, because something had to die in her for something eternal to live. You can recognize her, though she does not shout her arrival. She does not perform softness. She does not charm. She does not chase. When she speaks, it is slow, not out of hesitation, but because every word has weight. She does not seek attention. She commands it, not with noise, but with presence. A presence born from the crucible of detachment. You see, most women are not raised to be whole. They are raised to be needed, to become mirrors for a man's self-esteem, to become hosts for male projection, the enemy, Jung would say, the feminine part of the man's soul that he cannot yet face within himself. And so he seeks her, not to know her, but to see himself reflected in her gaze. She becomes his container, his addiction, his emotional salve. But the woman who no longer needs love has shattered that mirror. She has refused to be a screen for his movie. She no longer exists to carry the weight of his unintegrated shadow. His pain is not her project. His silence is not a challenge. His absence is not an invitation for her to perform worthiness. She has stopped trying to inspire love because she has learned love that must be earned is not love. It is approval dressed in the mask of devotion. And this is where her power becomes forbidden, because the world doesn't know what to do with a woman who no longer needs, who no longer begs, who no longer twists her shape to fit the wounds of others. She becomes dangerous, not because she harms, but because she sees. And when a woman truly sees, not just others, but herself, the world that depended on her blindness begins to tremble. She will not play the girl. She will not perform the fantasy. She will not shrink to soothe egos. She sits calmly in rooms where her silence unnerves men more than any scream could. She walks away without announcing it. She disappears, and only then do they realize she had been holding up the entire dynamic on the invisible strength of her emotional labor. And now that it's gone, now that she's no longer available to be a mirror, a sponge, a womb for broken masculinity, the illusion collapses. But it's too late, because she's not angry. Anger is for those still entangled. She's not hurt. Hurt belongs to the one still waiting for rescue. She is not proving a point. She is not testing anyone. She is simply done. In Stoic terms, she has achieved what Epictetus called apatheia, not indifference, but equanimity, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. She does not deny desire. She simply does not kneel to it. She has trained her soul not to hunger for what wounds her. This is not the woman who says she doesn't care because she's numb. This is the woman who cares deeply and chooses to remain whole anyway. She is no longer chasing completion in another's gaze. She has walked through that illusion, and now she stands on the other side, sovereign, still, and untouchable. She doesn't hate love. She simply no longer requires it to feel complete. And that distinction, subtle to the untrained, is where her true power begins. Because when a woman detaches from the compulsion to be loved, she becomes terrifying to those who once held her emotional dependence as leverage. Not because she's aggressive, not because she's controlling, but because she's unavailable to be controlled. Men don't fear loud women. They fear women who can leave without looking back. She doesn't need closure. She doesn't need apologies. She doesn't need validation. She's learned that the moment she begins to need, she starts leaking power. Carl Jung might describe this as a woman who has integrated her inner animus, the masculine within. She no longer seeks a man to protect her, to lead her, to complete her story. She has become the protector of her own boundaries, the leader of her own path, the author of her own inner narrative, and this integration makes her magnetic in a way that cannot be performed. She is not high value in the way pop culture defines it, curated, polished, strategically withholding. She is sacred, untouchable not by distance, but by depth. She does not posture, she simply is. She's done asking, "What's wrong with me?" Once upon a time, she believed it was her too muchness, her moods, her softness, her standards. She asked herself if she was too sensitive, too intense, too demanding. But no, she wasn't too much. She was just too awake for people who preferred her asleep. Now she sees it. She was never the problem. She was simply trying to bloom in soil that never intended to nourish her. So she uprooted herself, gently, without spectacle, and chose to grow elsewhere. And in doing so, she stopped being almost loved by men who only wanted to consume her light without ever earning her presence. To the uninitiated, she seems cold, but she's actually radiant. People say she's distant now, aloof, hardened, but that's because they only ever knew her through the lens of availability. They don't see the fire she's building inside. They don't see how her mornings begin in quiet ritual, her soul intact. They don't see how she gives now, not from depletion, but from overflow. She laughs louder now, but not for attention. She dresses how she pleases, not to be admired. She loves more slowly, but more fully, because she loves with choice, not need. That's the kind of woman you don't chase. You rise to meet her, and if you can't, she won't wait. She becomes the initiator of men's growth, whether they want it or not. Jung taught us that the psyche must evolve through confrontation with the shadow, the unacknowledged, unprocessed truth of the self. And for many men, she becomes that confrontation. They cannot manipulate her. They cannot impress her. They cannot seduce her with performance, because she no longer reacts to performance. She reads energy. She sees the boy beneath the bravado, the wounded ego beneath the charm, the fear behind the aloofness. And if they're not ready to face themselves, they will label her cold, unavailable, too independent. But deep down, they'll know she is the woman they were not prepared for. The test they failed, not because she was impossible, but because she required their evolution. She doesn't want a man to rescue her. She wants a man who's already rescued himself. Don't misunderstand. She's not done with men. She's done with men who haven't met themselves. She's not waiting for a hero. She's waiting for a mirror, a man who has done the same inner excavation she has, a man who doesn't fear her depth because he's not drowning in his own. She will not beg to be chosen. She will not convince you she's worthy. She already knows what she is. And if you don't, she will walk away, not with anger, but with peace. This is not a woman you lose. This is a woman you were never ready for. And if you are lucky enough to meet her, don't try to tame her. Don't try to figure her out. Just meet her fully from the stillness of your own wholeness. Only then will she stay. There will be others. Other women will cross his path. Some will be beautiful. Some will be clever. Some will say all the right things and do all the things she never did. But none of them will haunt him. None of them will wake him in the middle of the night, heart pounding, silence ringing, soul aching, because none of them will be her. She didn't leave a hole. She left a mirror. When she walked away, she didn't just take herself. She took the version of him that only existed in her presence. The way she looked at him, as if he was already whole. The way she spoke to the parts of him he didn't know how to name. The way her silence didn't punish. It reflected. And now that she's gone, he finally sees what she saw all along, that he was hiding behind noise, that he feared being known, that he mistook possession for intimacy. She was never his. She was only ever with him, as long as he could meet her truthfully. He will forget her voice, maybe, but not her presence. The world will try to give him replacements. New names, new faces, new next times. But when he sits in silence, real silence, she'll return. Not in body, but in sensation. The memory of how safe she made chaos feel. The way her energy softened the jagged parts of his masculinity, the sacred quiet between her sentences, where his soul could finally exhale. And that's what he will crave, even if he can't name it, the rare feeling of being fully seen by someone who never needed to own him to love him. She will become the standard, not the memory. He won't talk about her often, maybe never, but every woman after her will be compared to her. Silently, unconsciously, inevitably. They will laugh louder, but not with her sincerity. They will touch him more, but not with her depth. They will stay longer, but never feel as anchored, because she wasn't trying to be adored. She was trying to be honest. And when you've tasted truth, even once, the sweet poison of performance never satisfies again. She didn't need to be remembered, but he'll never forget. She never tried to make herself unforgettable. That's why she is. Because the women who contort themselves to be remembered usually are, but only in fragments. She, on the other hand, will live in whole, a cathedral in his psyche, a place he visits not to relive the past, but to mourn who he could have been, had he met her fully. And he'll wonder, what if I had known then what I know now? But he didn't. And that's the story. Not a tragedy, a turning point. She didn't leave so he could chase her. She left so he could finally find himself. And, somewhere, she's not thinking of him. She's not playing the what-if game. She's not scrolling his feed. She's not waiting for him to catch up. She's living. Softly, fiercely, quietly. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally started caring for herself. And in her world, peace is not the absence of love. It's the absence of needing to suffer to feel it. That is why he'll never forget her, because she was never just a woman. She was a mirror, a lesson, and a threshold he wasn't ready to cross. But one day, he will. And when he does, he'll smile, not out of regret, but reverence, because he will finally understand she wasn't the one that got away. She was the one who showed him the way. There's a difference between a woman who's closed off and a woman who's unavailable by choice. One hides because she's afraid to feel again. The other stands still because she's learned to guard her frequency like a sacred altar. This is the woman who no longer flinches at loneliness because she has learned that solitude is not emptiness, it's alignment. She does not avoid love. She simply no longer builds altars for the unworthy. She's not waiting. She's becoming from the outside. She might look detached, less eager, less warm, less open. But beneath that calm exterior is a furnace of self-respect. She's not withholding to punish. She's protecting what she spent years rebuilding, her energy, her intuition, her inner peace, her time. She's not in a hurry. She knows love without depth is just noise, and she'd rather sit in sacred silence than suffer in shallow affection. She's unavailable to games, but not to truth. You can't breadcrumb her. You can't confuse her. You can't test her to see how far she'll go. She'll go, all right, away, because she's not afraid of being misunderstood anymore. She doesn't need to correct your perception. She doesn't need to prove that she's worth staying for. She's not here to convince. She's here to witness. And if you can't show up with your full truth, no performance, no armor, no projection, she'll pass. Not because she doesn't feel, but because she feels so deeply, she refuses to pretend. She's not building walls. She's holding standards. She's not blocked. She's selective. She knows the cost of opening her heart to the wrong frequency. She's paid it in sleepless nights, in self-abandonment, in shrinking her voice to fit inside someone else's silence. And now, she's not angry. She's just clear. Clear on what she allows. Clear on who she invites in. Clear on what love should feel like. Not chaotic, not confusing, but clean, present, true. Carl Jung would say she's living in alignment with the self, the fully integrated being, no longer fragmented, no longer seeking healing in another's arms, no longer seduced by potential that comes dressed in emotional inconsistency. She's not closed to love. She's open to depth. You want her? Don't offer her good morning texts and empty charm. Offer her your pain. Offer her your growth. Offer her your real, the unpolished, the awkward, the evolving. Because what excites her isn't attention, it's intention, it's presence, it's soul. She's not here for stories. She's here for the man who's done editing himself to be liked and started becoming himself to be real. She doesn't need you, And that's why she's worthy of you. When she chooses you, it's not out of fear, not out of emptiness, not out of a wounded need to be filled. It's because she sees your depth and says, yes, you are worthy to sit with me in mine, not above her, not beneath her, beside her, in reverence, not rescue. This is the feminine soul at full expression, not cold, not hard, not distant, but so whole she refuses to be broken just to be desired. She is unavailable to fantasy, but always open to the real. And when you bring her truth, raw, flawed, sacred truth, you won't have to chase her. She'll walk beside you, silently, powerfully, willingly, because the woman who no longer needs love will always honor love that shows up whole. She doesn't fall anymore, not because she's guarded, not because she's cold, but because she's done collapsing to fit inside someone else's rhythm. She rises, and if love is meant to meet her, it will meet her up there. Falling in love was the old story, one that required her to shrink. She used to fall into words that felt like home, into hands that felt like safety, into promises that sounded like poetry. But every fall cost her something, her boundaries, her voice, her intuition, because falling always meant descending into fantasy, into self-doubt, into hope that someone would finally choose her deeply, until she realized she didn't need to fall. She needed to stand in her worth, in her fullness, in her stillness. And from that stillness, a new kind of love would begin. Now she waits to rise with someone who's done falling too, not someone who's looking for a nurse, a mirror, or a muse, not someone who's still building himself on her devotion, but someone who stands tall in his own becoming, a man who's done excavating his shadow and trying to bury it in a woman's womb. Because now she knows true love isn't found in chaos. It's built in clarity, built when two people rise from their own ashes, whole, seen, and still wanting each other. She doesn't chase chemistry. She follows alignment. The thrill, the butterflies. She's learned to outgrow those addictions because she finally saw the difference between chemistry that sparks in trauma and connection that grows in truth. Now she listens for presence, not performance, for groundedness, not excitement, for stillness, not seduction, because she's done being lit up by people who burn out when the real work begins. She knows the sacred is not loud, it's subtle. The love she's calling in now won't arrive like lightning. It will arrive like earth, quiet, steady, unmoving. It won't overwhelm her. It will meet her in still mornings, in real conversations, in eyes that don't flinch when she shows her shadow. It won't beg for her attention. It will honor her presence because she's not interested in being worshipped. She's interested in being understood. She doesn't want a fairy tale anymore. She wants a foundation. No more saviors. No more. Almost no more building on potential. Now, it's either rooted or it's removed. She wants the kind of love that doesn't start in intensity and die in confusion. The kind that builds like trust, unfolds like breath, and deepens like truth. A love that expands her, not erases her. She is the love she was looking for. That's the twist. She spent years searching for someone to complete her story, only to realize she was the author the entire time. Now, she doesn't fall in love because she's empty. She rises into love because she's already full. And the right person won't ask her to fall. He'll reach upward, meet her in that sacred sky, and they'll rise together, not as halves trying to become whole, but as wholes choosing to merge, not to survive, but to elevate. That's the kind of love she's worthy of now, because she no longer confuses love with longing. She knows the difference, and she'll never settle for the lesser again. Once upon a time, seduction was the game, the look, the chase, the tease, the drama. Now, it's presence, it's peace, it's wholeness, because once you've done the real work, the kind that rips you open and stitches you back up with truth, you no longer crave sparks that burn fast and die faster. You crave soul fire, the kind that glows steady, slow, and never asks you to shrink to stay warm. She doesn't seduce with her body. She seduces with her energy. She walks into a room and doesn't need to be seen, but she's felt, not because she's loud, but because she's clear. She's no longer trying to be chosen. She is the choice. And that's what makes her magnetic. She's not offering herself. She's offering an experience of depth, stillness, authenticity. No masks, no performance, just soul. Her wholeness isn't about perfection. It's about integration. She still has wounds. She still has fears. But she holds them like sacred children, not like weapons or apologies. Carl Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good." And that's her now. She's not trying to impress. She's not trying to heal anyone. She's not trying to be anyone. She's simply showing up as all of her. And that realness, it's rare. And rare is irresistible. Real men are drawn to her. Boys are intimidated by her. She doesn't have time for emotional unavailability, for breadcrumbing, for men who want the goddess, but can't sit with the storm. She doesn't dim her light to make others feel more secure. She doesn't apologize for knowing what she wants. She doesn't chase, because the right ones don't need chasing. And the wrong ones, they'll call her too intense, too deep, too different. But in truth, she's just not shrinking anymore. Wholeness isn't a trend, it's her baseline. Now she no longer needs fireworks. She needs resonance. She's not chasing love. She is love in its rawest, quietest, most grounded form. She no longer sees men as saviors or stories. She sees them as souls. And only those brave enough to bring their own wholeness get to meet her there. Not in the chaos, but in the calm after the storm, where the real ones always find each other. This is the woman who no longer plays the game. She's become the field, and only those who found their center get to play on her level. Because for her now, wholeness isn't the reward, it's the standard. And that's the most seductive thing of all.